It requires adequate cooperation with our foreign partners. It requires solving those matters that probably were postponed since the beginning of the war. And on the background of all of this, it is all happening in the context of Ukraine's accession to the European Union. This is all really big challenge for the country, but we are sure that we will be able to overcome this challenge. And what are we going to talk about today? We decided to build our today's talk in the following way. We are, first of all, going to talk how the traditional structural beacons are performed, and we will look at what is happening in the economy from the point of view of future URC conference. You know that starting from 2022, actually starting from Lugano, international conferences to help Ukraine transformed into Ukraine recovery conferences. We believe those forums are extremely important because they are this is certain conclusion of what we have and how we are going to move forward. I believe that this discussion will be interesting and useful for everyone. We have invited brilliant speakers, and I'm grateful to everyone who's going to listen to us today, not only offline, but also those who joined us online. That's just a background, general information, and now several words concerning our activity. So first of all, what I wanted to mention is that, could we please get to the first slide? Ukraine is not really advanced a lot if to talk about structural beacons in cooperation with IMF, and it is creating lots of problems for us. You see that in red color we see what is not performed, what is with delay. We see that we do not see here green color, excuse me for this tautology, but it is really creating problems for us. But we also understand perfectly well that cooperation with IMF is a certain beacon for all the other organizations that are cooperating with us. On the other hand, it is matter how Ukrainian state is working today and the conditions of this war on attrition. The second slide, that Ukraine is trying to follow Ukraine plan, but once again, if you take a look at the red color, then the picture is pretty versatile here. And unfortunately, red color, well, I will not say that it's domineering because lots of our structural indicators are in the process of performance, but at the same time, it is also a huge problem. Why it is a problem? Because these are funds that we are already receiving, and obviously, depending on how we are going to implement this Ukraine plan, the fate of allocating additional money will depend. The loan in 90 billion euros. You remember that it was a very problematic loan. There were problematic and political and other discussions, so we need to try to move ahead here. But also, in my mini presentation, I have positive news as well. For the last several days, Verkhovna Rada of Ukraine, that is today is the mode of plenary sessions, made several good steps. It adopted several decisions, and I would like to quote one of them. It is ratification of memorandum with the European Union on a Ukraine support loan that will actually define the directions, principles, and mechanisms of providing budget aid for Ukraine in 2026. And let's hope in the future as well. My conclusion is very simple here. Our partners do their best and we need to cooperate with them. But on the other hand, Ukraine, the shoulders of the Ukrainian government and our shoulders still have this very important challenge, very difficult challenge that we need to push the reforms. We need to change economic policy. We need to do everything possible for Ukrainian economy to be really sustainable in terms of EU accession, in terms of defense, so ultimate ratio of our all economic policy. And we have all gathered here and we are trying to work. And URC 2026, it is actually that threshold where we see what we have at that exact point. We are going to talk about this today and what will be the result of that conference if to talk about the current and future development and recovery. I will stop my short intellectual introductory speech here, and it is my pleasure to give the floor to my colleagues who's going to present separate direction of cooperation between Ukraine and international financial institutions, and each of them will take one of the dimensions on URC 2026 that will take place in Gdańsk, Poland. There are only 5 dimensions, and each of these dimensions, well, we need to talk about this, or at least we need to emphasize and to mention what we have and what we want and what we expect from URC conference. Thank you for your attention to my welcoming introduction speech. I hope that it will be interesting discussion, that we will have questions, and we will try to work in a very intensive way, taking into account the importance of this topic. That's it from my side, and it is my great pleasure to give the floor to Alexandra Batli, Institute of Economic Research and Political Advisory. So, Alexandra, please tell us what we have and what we want. I will start from the dimension that is called human capital. Well, it seems to me that it is the most important dimension, and when we as consortium were forming in 2022 recovery principles, we were saying that actually human focused principle is the first one, and that's why we start from this exact dimension. The main challenges is that we do not know who we are and how many of us are there, so we cannot answer this question, and it is the main challenge of today when we are talking about our today's existence, about safety. We know that there are less of us than we had, lots of people left, plus we have IDPs. We also know that share of aged population is growing, which means that not that our pension system is not supported enough. We also lack work labor. It is the first obstacle for the activity of the business. Around 60% of companies are facing this problem. And one more problem, it is a gap of skills. And the task that we have in Ukraine plan on human capital is to stop losing human capital and to create conditions that will be susceptible to for Ukrainians to come back to Ukraine. And actually in Ukraine plan that we are monitoring, we have the main directions of reforms that include health and main investments. So I mean in education, housing, and health once again. So what is mentioned in Ukrainian plan to solve all these challenges and to react to what we need to do and what we have already done? So the first reform is improvement of professional education. It was indicator that was implemented last year with delay, but still it was performed. We have the law on professional education. And in fact, now we are talking about its implementation. It's about education of adults that we need right now to integrate veterans in particular, to integrate women that are now outside of labor force, and we really need it. One more reform is improvement of preschool education. This law was adopted even before we saw that would be done. Actually, it was in advance. The third reform, it is improvement of the system of rehabilitation of people with disability. Deadline is this year, and it should be done. These are legislation changes. The fourth reform is moving from transference from military service to civilian life. Also, there should be the law. Probably this year it will be substituted by experimental decree of the Cabinet of Ministers to understand how to do it in the best way. Improvement of social infrastructure and deinstitutionalization. This is one more reform to improve conditions of life of children and adults, because deinstitutionalization is not only about children, it's also about veterans that require long-term care, because it's institutional care, and we really lack it now. You have to talk about improvement on the labor market. There are two strategies, employment strategy and demographic strategy. Now the most important thing is to start implementing them. And we already hear that there are intentions to create a separate ministry that will be dealing with the dimension of human capital. We'll see what our government decides concerning this. Housing is extremely important for people to get back to Ukraine, to live in Ukraine, because in Ukraine we lack social housing. It is practically non-existent. At the same time, we have almost 4 million of IDPs. So that's why the matter of housing is in investment dimensions. We need to invest in reconstruction and in building houses. And there also was the law on housing policy with delay, but it still was adopted. Now we are working on the law on housing, social housing, and then decree on procurement of social services. We do have experimental decree on procuring care services. Why it is needed? Because today, for example, women that are able to work that very often provide such care services, but they're outside the labor market. If we, for example, procure such services in NGOs, those women probably can bring more benefit to themselves and to their families and state. From culture, we added one reform. It is a strategy of reformation of Ukrainian culture. Important task here, important thing here that it was added when Ukrainian plan was discussed, and all population asked the government to do at least something culture-wise, and the strategy was adopted, and we see that now it is being implemented. If we are talking about various dimensions of URC, once again, all other dimensions are connected with a person. If there is no safety, Ukrainians will not get back to Ukraine. Young people will leave Ukraine. It is our challenge. Business, once again, creation of working places requires a good working climate. So life conditions, local government is responsible for this. So regional dimension is extremely important. And once again, Euro integration, it's European country where others would like to live in. This is a little bit changed mode of our demographic strategy, but that's all what we all need to do. Thank you for attention. Thank you. I will be sitting not to spend more time. So you see that the conclusion is pretty simple. If you're talking about human dimension, it is not only a matter of strategic development of our country, it is a matter of our current resilience, and it is of the utmost importance, because when very often when we were talking about such reforms, we were thinking about medium-term and long-term prospects. And now we are really pressed in time, so that's why today we need to do much more, and we need to conduct less discussions, taking into account the conditions our country is in right now. And now I would like to, it is maybe a pleasure to give the floor to our partner, consortium partner, Maxim Samoiluk, economist of Center of Economic Strategy. And he will be talking about business dimension. And then, as far as I understand, we will ask Katarina Glaskova, taking into account the timeline so that she can participate in our discussion as well. So Maxim, please. Thank you. We have not very standard event of our consortium, because usually we just review, we just consider those commitments that we promised our partners to achieve finances. Today, we have the opportunity to look around a little bit, to breathe out, and to try to understand why we do this. And URC is a great opportunity for this. If we look at the official website of the conference, the first sentence that we see will be the aim of URC. The aim of URC is to strengthen international support for Ukraine's recovery and also incentivize investments in Ukrainian business. Actually, any kind of beacons, any kind of indicators that we as consortium are talking about on a monthly basis, they are also for stimulating investments in Ukrainian business. Any kind of, we can talk about any kind of dimensions, any kind of indicators, it is all exactly for this. And European integration is directly connected with investments, first and foremost European, but not only, and vice versa. There will be no European integration without investments. And in the long-term prospect, without investments, it would be much more difficult to deal with Euro integration. So here, once again, we are getting to that issue that promises should be fulfilled. What we promised concerning IMF, what we promised promised in Ukraine facility. Igor has already mentioned how our map, performance map looks like. We practically do not have green color, lots of red, lots of yellow. It is not satisfactory. Also, a Kachka cost plan, other agreements with Kachka cost plan in 3 months since December is performed 900% out of 100, as our colleagues from other analytical centers have already calculated. And the new loan for 90 billion euros, Ukraine support loan, that was just today ratified in the Verkhovna Rada of Ukraine. It is also about our promises, and we already hear from speeches of some deputies that first vote for the ratification of the memorandum, and then later they say that if they sign something, they promise something, but they're not going to perform it. If we want to have investments, they will extremely depend on the European integration during full-scale war and when we have the end of hostilities. It is really important for us not to ruin relations with our partners. It is crucial for us to maintain this trust, and for this we need to act. But what we want to achieve, those indicators. Yes, we tried to have one step back and up and to look at what is actually needed for the business to invest. Actually, it can all be brought to 4 key dimensions if we are already using this word today. And any step, any obligation introduced by the government in this or that program has as its aim to strengthen each of these 4 dimensions. The first one is a physical capital. Whether you, as an employee, as an entrepreneur, build a factory and to know that it is covered by, that it is protected, that if you have certain destructions, then your risks are insured. If there are industrial parks, operational industrial parks with clear rules, with certain benefits for you if you need them, will you be tortured if you connect to all the networks, or it is easy thing with permissions and it gives you the opportunity to work and create new jobs. The creation of new jobs is important as well, by the way. We were already talking with, and Alexandra has already mentioned about human capital. It is of the utmost importance for business as well, whether it is this human capital at all, whether there is support in employing of IDPs, what is the policy of employing migrants, and whether we need them or not. It is the question that we need to give the answer to. Funds are extremely important, financial capital, whether it's easy to get the loan in the country, what is the interest rate, whether investor can be engaged, whether this investor can rely on that fact that his rights are protected. And of course, consumer demand. We have all of this physical capital, human capital, financial capital. We produce something, who we are going to sell it to, whether our sea is open, whether our railroad is going to work, whether we have access to foreign markets, or the Poles are going to block borders again, whether we have equal competition conditions in the country or not. Because, for example, someone should and have to pay VAT, and someone do not, and others do not necessarily have to pay it. So it is important for businesses, just as general frame, using the special status of our today's event within our consortium, the general matters that we all have to keep in mind for those that monitor those commitments, whether those commitments bring us closer to the goal or vice versa, whether they are useful or not. It is important to keep in mind for those who agree on those commitments, those who sign and vote for memorandums in Verkhovna Rada, those who, let's hope, will perform what was promised after signature. Thank you, Maxim. There are already questions to Maxim, but we will change the situation here a little bit. Maxim, get ready. There is a big question for you. Katerina, it is my pleasure to give you the floor. Katerina Glaskova, head of the community of Ukrainian entrepreneurship and enterprises. It is a unique organization because it is one of not so many Ukrainian professional associations, business associations, that will have separate event and separate blog responsible and of the speeches at URC. So let's do it the following way. Katerina, I will give you my seat here. Hello, everyone. First and foremost, I'm extremely grateful for understanding my situation. I have the next event and I don't want to be late there, so I'm grateful for this as well. So now I will try to put all together my thoughts and opinions. Will correct me if you want to hear something else. We as a Union of Ukrainian Enterprises, we participant in all URC. I saw how it was transporting when Luhano business was in the business in front of the other building, and they didn't really take part in the discussion. And business environment is now extremely involved in all the discussion concerning Gdańsk. I can say that we as Unity Union, we have very strong partners in Poland, Polish associations, and we have had long-lasting cooperation with them. So we have some joint identification of problems, but a different solution how to solve. The same people, because Poland, of course, if they might lose, of course, labor force if our people come back, but for us, we will be happy because our people will come back. So we need to look for something that will be beneficial for everyone. I'm very far from the thought that we can force someone to come back. These are free people from free country, and they will make the decision depending on how events are going to develop in Ukraine and what the conditions in other European countries and so on and so forth. That's how a decision is going to be made. So let me also talk a little bit about human dimension. So what do we see? We really have the problem with people, but it's not new, probably it's now that this critical peak. Even before the war, every year, every survey showed us that we had lacked people. I agree that this gap between the need, so there are those people who cannot find work, and there are lots of vacancies that cannot be filled in. So this is this gap that has to be covered. The fact that people love the country, not going to repeat here. So where do we see the solution? Well, first and foremost, we really need some kind of, not even policies, but we have to learn to integrate veterans. Those numbers that I saw, a little bit more than 10%, 12% it seems to me, veterans that come back from the front line, they returned, they came back to their previous workplaces. Lots of them just not want to go back there because they know more, they can more. And we actually opened special committee in our union. It is our help for them. It is free participation for veteran business so that they can develop in that sphere if they choose this path. I personally constantly remind that we have huge potential of people, 50 plus, 55 plus, 65 plus. Let's be frank here. In Ukraine, those people are outside of labor market. At least they were there for a pretty long time. Now, these are people that we can rely on because there are no mobilization risks, no drafting risks. In the modern world, these are actually still young people. So that's why I believe that we need to take into account that we have the potential there. And it is actually the smallest category that is leaving the country because mostly young people are leaving. So that we can reach out this category. And of course, we need migration policy. We will have this labor migration. We need people. And I am looking at all those rallies that are taking place. Well, let's reflect it. It's more or less the same. It's Poland is for the Poles. The same is here. It is not the matter of substituting Ukrainians. We need to understand all of this. It is a matter of closing the gaps where for some reasons we lack Ukrainians. So most probably it's about filling out the places and not that someone is going to take someone else's job. But this procedure should be easy to predict. It should be predictable, it should be simple, and it should be transparent. We had the analysis of all the documents that have to be done to hire a person with international citizenship. So there are lots of documents. There are lots of documents connected with this. The price of one international employer, it's from 120 to 160,000 hryvnias to hire them. It's a huge process because there are different, it's a visa. They need to obtain visa. We now have one case because they come to us through Europe. So we need to open European visa for them so that they are let inside the European Union, and then they need to enter Ukraine. So actually now we are dealing with this case from Ivano-Frankivsk when a person cannot be of certain qualifications, still cannot be employed because of all these long processes and procedures. The idea is what to do. So our offer is to take a look at this list of documents and timelines. Maybe something can be fastened. Second of all, we are a digitalized country. Maybe something can be done very fast digitally. Second of all, there is this principle of risky countries, not risky countries for migration. All countries of the European Union went through that. We need to take a look at this differently, and we need to define that, for example, Bangladesh is not that risky country. So we have what to work on. We are not going to have ideal picture, but we will definitely be able to improve it. And there is one more thing concerning migration. And probably we will also be having such roundtable during URC. We had range of events. We had this way Poland, Germany, Ukraine, such as threefold dialogue when we were talking a lot about investments and people, and there were ideas voiced that we needed, as I have mentioned earlier, that if they leave Poland, they will come here. It's good for us, it's bad for them. So maybe they will also try to think how to maintain people. And we need to look for some solutions. And there was this idea about this opportunity to migrate without losing the resident status, which is extremely important for people. We need to find some kind of mechanism which will let them work, maybe on some kind of project, and then to get back. This is just an idea. We do not have some kind of ready-made offer how to do it legislation-wise, of course. Now, concerning investments, just today we were talking in the office with the colleagues that Ukrainian business is not stopping in small investment. Sometimes it's about this wish to develop, but in majority of cases, it's because there is no choice. It's just because everything is destroyed and we need to build everything from the scratch. And the main investments in Ukraine is as internal investor, even though I do not like the split. For external investors, what is important? Let me tell you for sure. Well, it was done 9 months ago actually from the survey, but I do not believe that it changed that significantly since then. So we surveyed 400 companies, European companies, and 400 altogether, Ukrainian and foreign companies. We had same questions for them: what they need to enter Ukraine, and what are the expectations of our business from European investors. So in a nutshell, the key, let me look for Ukrainian version. So key obstacles for European investors: war, corruption, bureaucracy, unpredictable legislation, and weak protection of investors' rights. People know that it can be formed a little bit differently, but the questions may be a little bit different, but answer will still be the same. What investors want to invest in Ukraine? Excuse me, I need my glasses because I can't see properly. So guarantees, but once again, it's about protection, predictability of legislation, initial tax benefits, war risk insurance, and real access to transparent recovery tenders. The last point is mentioned very often when we meet our European colleagues. They all ask how, where, conditions. And Ukrainian business was talking about this as well, and now European business is talking about this, that price should not be the only and the only important criteria. Cheap is not always of high quality. Reviews have to be, those criteria have to be reviewed. And this transparency tender request, we will soon become such procurement experts soon, because European companies reach out to us and they ask to show them the way. At URC, we are definitely going to talk about million and billion infrastructural projects. If we want foreign funds to enter our country, we need to do it in a transparent and clear way to have really equal access. Well, actually, I'm for Ukrainian business, but I want it to be market competitive conditions, competitive field where each can offer their conditions. Even though Europeans, we from our side ask them to hire Ukrainians to create joint enterprises with Ukrainians so that we have money here, because otherwise that's also what we are trying to say within URC, within various other platforms, is that if our donors, if our partners that help us a lot, and that is true, but if there is no support that will help to boost our economy, they will not be able to help us eternally. We need to make certain steps that will help the business to develop so that we ourselves can fill in the budget and so on and so forth. We already had discussion about shadow business. I'm not going there today. And what else is important, what we are also going to discuss at URC, and it was also within our threefold discussions, we are going to do this. It is how actually all these talks about investments and interest to Ukraine, how to move all of this into practical dimension, because this request is huge, but everything is still paused. It's already the 5th year, but everyone is still considering this. The biggest investment are from those companies that were here before the war. They understand the landscape, and majority of them keep on investing. And new companies, they are still waiting because there is still huge line. It looks like there is still huge line, but what to do to have the projects already, and not just some kind of random people to come, but to have it, so it's not some kind of one-off situation, but to have it systematically. I do not have specific answer here. I just quoted you what potential investors are saying. These are companies. It is Spain, Italy, Portugal, Germany, Poland, Denmark. There are lots of various countries in the survey that participated. So it is kind of European dimension. So I hope that I managed to answer your question. Do I need to add something to it? Thank you, Katarina. We are moving from macro to very specific things. The only matters that I wanted to add before asking the question to Maxim, that if we look at the URC documents, if we look, for instance, at Ukrainian facility, or if we look at other documents, then it is strictly mentioned there that there should be a development of Ukrainian business, so that this recovery is sustainable with all the consequences. So now the question is how to really do that right, so that our business participate, but it is understandable that this problem of splitting of labor force between us and them is extremely not simple, and we really need to make some non-traditional decisions here. Indicators of Ukrainian facility reform. In the section of business environment, there are 6 reforms and investments in micro support. Indicator 8.10, investment and financial support in the second quarter of 2026, gathered combined with indicator 8.11 for the first quarter of 2027. Actually, it was about providing grant program of business support, in particular Robota, and also programs 579 in €1 million. But at the same time, when changes were implemented, this indicator was cancelled. Actually, there are several investment indicators there. There were reconsideration of all such indicators in health and education. In health and education for 25 and for 2026, or for 2024, 2025, the financing was reduced, and it was moved to 2026, 2027. If to talk about small business, it was just combined, and there was a single number. And then for the whole program, just 2026 and 2027, but it is not about reducing. It's just we would not be able to perform it. The sum of support is still high there. It's just the timeline is a little bit prolonged. But when we are talking about this Ukrainian facility investment component within Ukrainian plan, then it's those 38 billion of budget support. But there is the other component, 7-something billion. It's actually Ukraine investment framework, so it's this investment component. And as far as I remember, there we already have 15% of small and medium enterprises. These are separate investments, and this is separate investment indicator. So there was some kind of review here, but I do not think that it is very critical, because one is added to the other. and it's just postponed to the end of the program. Yes, I would like to add to the context also that there are some other indicators in Ukraine facility, because in Ukraine facility there are indicators when something has to be done. For instance, reforms, laws should be adopted, and there are some indicators when money they need to spend money. So it is actually that investment one. Well, it's also might be complicated sometimes, that's true, but there are investments in such important things as demining, for instance, investments in demining agricultural lands. So these are extremely important indicators. Once again, if we look at the surface, and once again, it's all about business support, because actually it is improving business climate in the country, any kind of investments like this, and they really stay in the program, they remain in the program, and it is of the utmost importance, and it is very useful. But at the same time, if we're talking about investments, we need to know how to spend money, because in certain indicators we haven't used money in 2026, 2025. We haven't used all the funds. Once again, why? Because it's because of the priorities. Because when the budget is limited, sometimes we this national cashback, yes, we have enough money for that, but at the same time, these funds should be used for investments programs in education and health, or housing, because housing is underperformed. But funds were spent for something else. So here it's about priority. Once again, we need to talk that government needs to see it, need to take into account investment indicators are important and they're needed. I would like to say that with employment center, I was wrong. Almost 22% of veterans. I just didn't want to give you the wrong. No, registered in employment center. It means that this number can be even smaller, actually. Thank you. Let's move on. We still gather some collect questions, so there still will be the opportunity for us to talk about some matters that we haven't covered yet in our speeches. Now I would like to give the floor to Mr. Yuri Romashko, Executive Director of Analytical Center, Institute of Analytics and Advocacy. Yuri, please. Thank you, Igor. Well, during these 43 minutes, the most often used word is investment. The second place is human capital. I will try to talk about regional policy right now, about decentralization in this direction, in this dimension. The first slide is actually regarding this, reforms of public investments management. If to answer your question, well, you have some frame here. Alexandra mentioned about challenges, Maxim was talking about investments. So if we get back to your question at the beginning, what we have at URC, if we are talking about investments or wider about the reform of public investment management, in my subjective opinion, for the last year, we achieved big progress, because actually this was exercise, this is called learning by doing. Actually, in January, February, we adopted legislation, and already in September, we started working on forming the first medium-term plan of priority public investments. Actually, we had this whole infrastructure of reform here. It's just what I just remembered. It's this priority public investments, then it's all those project portfolio and the level of regions, communities, and so on. So we need to imagine that it was not only on the national level, but all the levels, subnational, local, of actually each community. So this is also a huge scale. Moreover, what do we mean by what we formed? These are real estimations, projects. We started implementing something and so on. So we have been working a lot on modernizing the very system of public investment management, I mean, DREAM system, and so on and so forth. So really, the work, there has been a lot of work done. And if you talk in long-term prospect, then we are on the right way, because what is the main goal? We need to prepare our municipalities, need to train them to work with absolutely very different scales of resources. We need to prepare our municipalities to have projects of different quality. We need not just to give them navigation, but specific practical knowledge. And we need to get them familiar with the rules and procedures of the EU. So Ukraine is doing it, if to talk about long term. If to talk about short term, here and now, definitely, naturally, there are lots of problems that might occur. Legislation is not written in the ideal way somewhere. We have to work on this. We didn't manage to do something in time and so on and so forth. So we can keep on working on that list. We can talk about capacities. But for instance, in our slide, we have the information about sectoral strategies. And it is something that we didn't manage to do in 2025. And that was postponed till now. Why it is important? Because the reform was actually pretty successful. It is possible to cascade it. Why sectoral strategies are important? Sectoral strategies should define specific priorities, especially when we are talking about limited resources conditions, limited human capital, and so on and so forth. Because all these priorities have to be converted into specific suggestions, specific offers that will be in all those scary words that I was talking about: project portfolios, long-term plans, and so on and so forth. And all these offers should be converted into specific projects. That's why the strategy should become a real operational tool, live tool, and not just nice but empty words. So we need to completely change this logic of system of strategic planning on all the levels. Today, we have already adopted the order of how sectoral strategies till the end of this year should be updated. Even more so, we have developed methodological recommendations. Even more so, there is a decree that defines action plan. A strategic investment council has already a list of all strategic documents in specific spheres and that have to be updated. It is extremely important. It's extremely difficult exercise because if we move to a different slide now that is more about a straight strategy of regional development, we are always talking that, well, and it is one of the challenges, that we do not have enough capacity, sufficient capacity on the local level. We need to invest, and definitely it is like this. But it does not mean that on the national level our capacity is that huge that we don't know what to do with this. So it's also a big challenge. Paradoxically, on the local level, the strategy of the development of communities, the strategy of development of regions, the state strategy of regional development, updated one, and for sectoral forming of project portfolio on the level of regions, communities, and so on, is done according to the updated strategy. It was not done on the level of the state, unfortunately, and I believe that till the end of this year, this is also extremely big challenge because we have lots of tasks here. So that's why the role of strategy in this reform, for all these reforms to appear, is also of the utmost important. This is the first thing. The second thing, we'll talk a little bit more. Yes, I see, I understand. No, I'm listening very carefully. Yes, I know that I'm talking very fast. I understand this. And about regional development, well, we can talk a lot about this. And from the point of view of cohesion policy and so on. I started talking about state strategy of regional development that was updated. It is important, but what we have to understand here, that up for now, there is new methodology developed, and soon the process of updating existing strategies, state strategy of regional development, will start. Why it is important? Because starting from 2028 till 2034, there will be new multi-annual financial framework in the EU, so budget framework for 7 years, and it is crucial to align our strategy of regional development to this framework, because it's about access to resources, it's about structural funds, it's about the same cohesion policy that I have mentioned about, and lots of other things. So that's why we are planning this work as well. A lot has been done about splitting the territories in functional types, so that specific regions, specific territories get targeted aid. Not just some kind of general approach, but what is needed the most, that should be received by the region. We can talk a lot about this. It is present in indicators. I'm not going to dwell upon it a lot. You can see on the website there is also legislation about public consultations already. It is important as well, even though this law will come into action after the end of the martial law. But it is important now to think how to have participation of citizens in formation of the strategies, and not only because the war is prolonged and we do not understand what to do with this. So it is important to already work now with all these mechanisms. Colleagues have already mentioned about funds, investments, and Ukraine facility within a certain pillar. I suppose a certain percent. If to talk generally, it's 20%, but if to talk in funds, then it's a little bit more than 1 billion euros of resources that have to go for various regional needs. So we are talking about specific sectors, education, health, and social infrastructure. And as you can see on the slide, till the end of the second quarter, there should be this first stage of understanding how the process is going on with spending the funds. That is not very simple task, and it is not very easy to use resources effectively. So it is of the utmost importance, and it's about shelters, it's about new Ukrainian school reform, it's the same, lots of things. So basically, it's pretty practical, the real things that are of the utmost importance here. Challenges. Alexandra has started from challenges, and I decided to leave it till the end. I'm not going to surprise anyone here. They are traditional. They are the same as Alexandra was saying. First and foremost, these are people. Outflow of people and skills connected with this, and then connected to it. Once again, it is quality of all these documents that we are preparing, strategies, and so on and so forth. So this list can be prolonged. The only thing that I need to add to all of this, these are also safety risks, security risks, especially if you're talking about frontline regions. I think that we all understand what is, for instance, protection of energy infrastructure. When you shouldn't just protect it, but there are also shaheds flying around and lots of other things, and you're working in such conditions. The same is about any kind of infrastructure, and it is extremely complicated exercise. Despite all of this, lots of regions just fantastic. Let's take Sumy, for instance. The Ministry of Development is now actively working on cluster model on territory development. It's extremely effective tool, and some here, well, this is pretty capable region to support other regions in other skills, and not, for instance, Lviv, that is traditionally strong in working with European tools of financing and programs and so on and so forth. And it is all being done now in times of war, so it is really awesome, but security risks still remain, and we need to take it into account. I will probably stop here, and if you have any clarifying questions, I will be happy to take them. Thank you, Yuri. And before I give the floor to Roman, that is going to talk about European dimensions and the matters connected with energy, that's I feel, because it is extremely important. I would like to say that this presentation that we are having, it is already on the website of RRR4U. Maybe it is not very easy to see what's going on there, but you can find this presentation on the website, and you can get familiar, and you can use it. It's for wide audience, wide public, and if it is interesting and if it is needed for you, we will be very pleased that our work have some kind of influence, some kind of impact. This was just an advertisement. Right now, after advertisement, Roman. So what's going on with the European dimension? Thank you. Well, I will be courageous, and I will state that if to talk about some kind of political decisions, URC will not be a platform where some sensations will be raised, because if we take a look at the political calendar, that it will be clear that all key decisions would be taken before the conference. Now it is informal summit of ministries on Cyprus. It's coming to the end. It is the end of Cyprus. Voting, it is the end of this for presidents Poland, Denmark, Cyprus. Starting from July, there will be the presidency of the next trio from Ireland. And Ireland, well, the main topic is competitiveness. Yes, they have certain questions concerned with security and defense, with enlargement, but if to look at the focuses, they there is nothing peculiar there. So that's why European Commission has already mentioned that on 16th of June it will offer to open the first chapter of negotiations, and at that EU summit on the 18th and 19th of June, after the summit of G7, after the birthday of Donald Trump, they will approve it officially. So the main intrigue, not sensation but intrigue, will be how many chapters will be opened, because hypothetically all can be opened, and representatives of Ukrainian government are pretty optimistic concerning that. But so far we are talking and we hear that there will be several first or the first chapter opened. The first chapter is fundamentals. It seems to me that it is also connected with pretty slow performance of those commitments that are in the list of 10 reforms called Kachkakos plan. And the fresh case, it is the story with anti-corruption strategy project for the next period. And people, deputies, had to introduce additional version, and then government just published their draft law as an alternative one. So discussion about anti-corruption strategy, where we have the matter of independence of bodies and competition procedures and so on and so forth. So all the matters that are mentioned in Kachkakos plan and in our benchmarks, it is all moving now to the platform of the parliament. The next interesting topic that has recently appeared and it will be discussed at various meetings, and definitely it is going to be discussed at URC. It is the initiative of Federal Chancellor Merz concerning Sweden's specific status of Ukraine until the moment when it obtains membership of the European Union. It has been the Ukrainian position has been voiced already, but the discussion will still be going on, because we need to understand why this thought has appeared, because the EU is looking for some kind of modes of encouraging Ukraine to work on reforms and to integrate deeper, and they are looking to find answers to the questions what to do during this uncertainty period when where actually there is the status of the country in negotiations, but at the same time there is no membership status. So how to encourage? It is politically wise. If to talk about economic part, and once again, colleagues have already mentioned that it is crucial when we are talking about budget support within Ukraine plan that is going to be strengthened now by additional funds, and also within this new microfinancial framework that is also included in our slides. And we will keep on analyzing it, monitoring it. We will have green and red indicators, marks. So at URC, there will be a separate energy platform, and I believe that it is the opportunity to show how those steps or reforms that were done by Ukraine can really bring some benefits. Example here, it's National Plan on Energy and Climate, and in the condition when energy strategy is in secret, climate law is only starting. This is the key document everyone is looking at, and they all understand what is the Ukrainian plan for the next 5 years. And our analytical center, once again, we are going to have a small advertisement here. Our analytical center helped to develop now is trying to update this and also manage to have the special filter at the platform of Ministry of Economy to look for various programs of finances for businesses and for communities to implement their projects and to show how we can achieve goals, energy and climate ones. The same is about other energy-related matters. So we can say that, okay, the law was adopted on market integration. It's a great opportunity to announce that, well, if we show great pace of reforms, then in 2 years you will be able to enter, not to have bilateral contracts, but to enter the the stock market, and you will be able to buy or to sell energy. And Ukrainian business, for example, will enter Poland stock market. About other things, renewable sources of energy. URC is a great opportunity to announce that this year we are going to have the competition on gigawatt of renewable sources of energy based on new rules. So when you build and when you are there and for 20 years you're receiving this fixed cash flow. It is also a great opportunity to announce about 1.3 gigawatts competition of building generation in region. This will also support with fixed price for the first 5 years. And this is also the great opportunity to say that there will be no minister that will stop this competition because he does not like some kind of surnames, because previous competition was conducted in May and then it was frozen. It was unfrozen only when the minister changed in December. So here to the opportunity to show real investment opportunities and business models that worked based on those solutions, and to show that European integration really can be transformed into wonderful investment opportunities. I believe that that's the spirit that the Poles would like to hear the conference, and that's what we can use. Thank you. Thanks a lot, Roman. And we see all together here that when we are talking about investment opportunities, it is their support in our economic life and their our participation in their markets. And in my opinion, it is a new moment. We are always talking about investments that are coming to us, but our investment that are working there also brings some benefits for Ukraine. But I think that we will still be talking about this. And now I would like to change our mode here. I would like to ask you, our next panelist, to join us. Katarina, if you want to join us. Okay, you're leaving us already. Okay, clear. I do not see Alexei. Okay, while you're looking for Alexei, I wanted in our discussion, on the one hand, we got expert vision on how it is all going on, and now Alexei, please join us here. I was trying to give you this opportunity to join us. So we will talk based on the position of those people that do a lot of things manually. It is extremely important because if nothing is done, but if we just make some kind of plans, but at the same time we do not have specific movement, then of course we have some problems. And apart from that, I do believe that our colleagues will let us to understand the dimension that we were talking about better in the economic direction, and also to talk about one more dimension, this dimension concerning security policy and matters connected with the development of the military-industrial complex, because without that, we cannot talk about resilience, first of all, based on our defense opportunity and taking into account the situation that is now at war and those policies that are now being implemented by our partners, and unfortunately not our partners only. It is my great pleasure to give the floor to Alexei Dorohany, Executive Director of VRDO company. They do a lot for simplifying and development of business climate and regulations that are being used in Ukrainian economy. Alexei, please, the floor is yours. Thank you. I do not want to argue with the moderator, but we are not a company, we are the organization. So security dimension, I have heard at this panel that some people were talking that we have various dimensions, but for me, security dimension is the most important one. For many years, we were talking about this in civil society and in the government. There was always this huge gap. When you, for example, were at the frontline areas and then immediately you go to URC, these are two various worlds. People are talking about different topics and it sounds and it looks, well, it is changing the priorities. So that's why it's really great that we have this security priority at URC, and I hope that it will let us to talk about recovery, about reforms from that point of view that without defense, we cannot talk about anything else, and without security. And of course, during every panel, I would like every speaker to ask himself or herself how defense, why it is important in the context of this or that topic, the matter of human capital, the matter of economy, the matter of Euro integration. It seems to me that every organization can find the role that it can play to strengthen defense. And the coalition that was recently created is about that. Then URC is also already defense first, and it is amazing. But the biggest expectation that I personally have from URC is that we are gradually uniting those bubbles, we are uniting the world, and those people that came to speak at a business panel want to would like to visit defense panel. They will understand that it is not scary, that it is interesting to communicate, to get to know other people. And in my opinion, it is the key difference of this and the previous URC, because we can communicate and we can discuss and we can create joint projects on energy, critical infrastructure, protection, drone providers, protection of administrative buildings, fire drones. So if to mix all of these dimensions, then the reach everywhere we can find something that might be not relevant to the previous URC. There were two panels about defense at the previous URC. This year it will be more of them. So this is my first expectation from URC, because people from different spheres, different industries, they are trying to find themselves in solving the problems that exist in the sphere of defense, and they militarize their work, their analytics, their projects, and they become defense first. And in the European Union and in Ukraine, obviously. Previously, we did not have this in such quantities, and we very often had to provoke the audience. And it seems to me today, when I'm provoking you, it's not even the provocation already. It's like, well, okay, defense, of course, we can't go anywhere without defense. 2 years ago, embassies, development institution, banks, when they heard about defense, they were saying, oh, no, goodbye, someone else is going to deal with this, we're not going to deal with this. Today, this reaction is still can be met, but we meet less and less of this. That's my first expectation. The second expectation, of course, there are different formats of cooperation in the sphere of defense, where allies can help us, where we discuss joint enterprises, where our defense industry is coming, where the European defense industry is coming. This year, it's going to be discussed at URC. It means that there will be agreements, memorandums, announcements, and it is really great, because these are memorandums that are going to be announced, and before that, they were taking place, somewhere behind the scenes, in some kind of, during some kind of workshops. I don't know, in some very distant hall, there was this round table on dual use, and the agreement was announcement in the end, and there were only 20 people present there. URC, it's more than 1,000 people. The room where one of the biggest agreement was announced had only 25 people in it. Of course, everything is changing. There are different interests, different announcements, so we are all waiting agreements, solutions from URC that will help Ukrainian defense. And it seems to me that is my second expectation. Thank you. Alexandra, just in a nutshell, because I also have this question. Well, no, it's not the question as such. It's just we keep on communicating. So when I was saying that the human capital is the first one, it is this discussion who's the first out of four, that the safety is the first. We are talking about this repeatedly. We are starting from air defense and missiles and everything else, and then we move to finances, for instance. So here I agree with you. I just want to introduce certain clarity, what I meant, where people are the first. Thank you. Then let's do it the following way. Now I would like to give the floor to Yulia Shipova, Senior Project Manager, Ministry of Economy, Environment and Agriculture. For me, it's still Ministry of Economy, despite all the complications, changes, and simplifications. And after that, I have some questions that I would like to ask concerning previous sessions as well. If to talk about business support and not only. Well, concerning Ministry of Economy title, we have this half a joke among donors. They call us mean everything. So it's easier than to pronounce our big title. I would like to get back a little bit to the previous discussion, also in terms of that fact that nothing is happening at URC. All preparatory work is going on before that. Well, it is true, but at the same time, URC is this platform where a lot of things are announced, and very possible that Ukraine support loan solutions or something else will be announced exactly then. So actually, the government is now working on the new plan. So it's interesting to look at the slides where some part, well, I understand that it is not going to look like this in 1 month, but it is the work that is being done. And what else is important here is that Ukraine plan becomes this part of URC, not only through the reforms that were discussed within 4 dimensions, so some kind of separate components of each dimension, but also as wholesome topic. One of the panels of Euro integration dimension will be dedicated to Ukraine facility and its functionality. And we're also planning to organize workshop in business dimension. So it is interesting that approach, the conference is going to be rather from the side of finances and developing the system of monitoring and control than rather from the side of reforms. Of course, it's understandable that we're going to talk about reforms, but about some kind of separate topics within each of those slots. But Ukrainian plan, we consider as preparation to work with structural EU funds. And it was already mentioned in the previous discussion, multi-annual financial framework, a new 7-year program of financial use. And it is this understanding that it is moving towards the side that is more similar to the functioning of Ukraine facility. So it's not that everything is modeled. For us, the very facility was modeled on programs of post-COVID programs for member countries. And actually, this approach will find its reflection also in new multifunctional framework. And this experience, or also our experience of implementing facility, implementing reforms, using funds, it is considered as something that is very important and relevant, not only in the context of Ukraine and its accession and its reforms, but also in wider European perspective. Separately, well, it is a matter of structural funds, because part of Ukrainian facility, these are certain investments, public investments, and it is also preparation to working with big European financing, working with contractors, visibility that these are EU funds, and so on and so forth. So this is also that part that is going to be discussed at URC. And separate block, it will be like a separate workshop. It will be about developing the system of monitoring and control. Once again, it is that part where we show certain progress as well. And it is actually one of the points of Kachka-Kos plan is actually the strengthening of a system of internal control, internal audit. So that's why this matter remains in the agenda of donors. And the experience of developing the system for Ukraine facility is considered as a relevant one for further post-war financing and recovery financing, and for any big programs. To have this understanding, how to work with auditors, how to work with reports, what how to omit any kind of users, and so on and so forth. And it is important for URC as well. Plan here is considered That's a great example that we can talk about within this conference. Thanks a lot. I will use the rights and opportunities of the moderator here. I have two questions, and then after that we will get back to one of the questions from the audience. I would like to ask Alexandra and Maxim to take a look at our broadcast. We have the continuation of the question there. For me not to read it all out, please take a look. There is a question there. You will be answering. So the first one, we see currently that there is this phenomenon that on the one hand, we are bringing lots of weapons to Ukraine. I'm not a specialist here, so maybe I might say something wrong here, but well, we need patriots and so on and so forth. So this whole nomenclature, so I'm not going to touch this topic. But on the other hand, we see this phenomenon, extremely interesting phenomenon, when Ukrainians can produce funds abroad. And here I'm talking about arms expert, weapons expert. So could you please comment this? So sell or not to sell, taking into account that we need the drones and everything connected with this. And the second moment, maybe it's rather technical. I don't know whether we can go there or not. We see that as of now, production of weapons and drones is taking place in some kind of initiative mode. So there are companies that offer their variants. So in your opinion, do we need some kind of policy here? For instance, some kind of standard, some kind of a drone single platform, and around it we are going to develop all of this just to focus our efforts. So maybe it is not time for this now. The more people produce drones and other types of weapons, the better it is for Ukraine. Please, and then after that I will have the question for you. Three questions, yes. So the first I'm going to answer how it's going now, how it's working now. So formally, there is no export prohibition currently. In fact, we all understand that export permissions for drones or some other defense goods, commodities, the permissions are practically not issued. What permissions are there? The permissions for joint enterprises after intergovernmental agreements. So how this process looks like in practice, the Ukrainian producer finds foreign producer, they agree that they want to organize some kind of joint enterprise, and they lobby their governments so that governments agree this agreement, approve this agreement. After that, we see the announcement, the signing, the news. Then, I don't know how it is happening, but then certain permissions are issued on creating joint enterprises. There is no other modality of export defense commodities now. It's all halted now, de facto. Whether it's good, whether it's bad, this approach that we currently have. It has pros and cons. If to talk about benefits, then definitely Ukrainian government, the office of the president is conducting bilateral discussions and justifying political security and other discussing such conditions, and that they are aligned with national interest of Ukraine. The disadvantage is that it is taking place manually, and there is no some kind of, well, as we can all imagine it in Ukraine, we have some kind of portal. I am a drone producer. I go to DIA, and drones immediately start being exported. So some kind of simple, great process, after which there are no questions left. Everything is happening very fast. Weapon is being produced, exported, funds are earned on production of new drones. At the front line, we have more and more great drones that will help us ruin the enemy. But this process is definitely different, so it is a disadvantage. What, in our opinion, should be target state policy? What do we need to target? We can target three things. in this aspect. The first one is to earn all the funds in the world, so like to sell our intellectual property and our drones as expensive as possible. The second thing that we can target is that what we have now, geopolitical and other goals. The third thing that we can target, and I believe that it is correct, it's interdependence. $100, $1 million, doesn't matter. The deeper Ukraine is embedded in supply chains of ally countries, the more we need it. Or like countries. It is not measured in funds. Look at Taiwan. Whether Taiwan is happy that they earn a lot on chips. Of course they are pleased. Of course that is satisfied. While the whole world is protecting Taiwan because Taiwan is paying them? No, because they are dependent on Taiwan. And our allies, let's be frank here, our goal here is to talk about cooperation. It has to be joint independence, so that their factories can work together with ours, so that we are faster and more effective. But they also should not be able to do without us, because our experience. We have the war going on, and we want to have new things. So if we have this codependent policy, then what we offer, it has several criteria. First of all, this is some kind of defense agreement. We are not trying to earn all the funds in the world. We are not trying to push out the weapons of our allies from those markets where they are present. We are exporting the safety. We are importing the safety, and we are exporting the safety. This is the first criteria. The next criteria is having a policy for armed forces of Ukrainian contracts. Of course, it is the first priority. We can sell only something that is not bought by Ukrainian state. Moreover, if something is changed, excuse me, but there should be the point in the agreement, Ukrainian state is the top priority. So you stand in the line and you need to wait for your drones. This is the second criteria. And the third criteria, it is that ally country should help Ukrainian defense industry, provide finances or maybe some other steps. German model, the Dutch model. We were expecting safety from them. So they, of course, have the moral right to export the safety from us. This is the model that we offer. This was the second question. And what about the third? Single standards. Are they needed or not? I believe that we are getting closer to this now. But it is always about the balance. The Ukrainian army, Ukrainian defense industry, this innovation cycle is now being measured by weeks. A new line at the front line. Well, even if you open the chain, then, I don't know, there is something like Rosatka. You choose the color, the memory, something else. And the same is about drone. You choose frequency, you choose what it's going to bring, how far it's going to fly, and so on. Why? Because it is not like you go and you buy the tank and you win. So it does not work this way. It's very fast, innovative cycle. And if we have standardization, it might go slower, because it's understandable that the market is more and more competitive. We are now also considering the matter of buying drones from the market. I don't know what kind of drone you know. Well, Vampire, yes, 10,000. But to fix, for instance, drone platform bomber that has this range and so on and so forth. And then producers can bid. And it will mean that we already have mature market, something can be standardized, and some benefit can be received from various things. Thank you. Now the question to Yulia, and then colleagues will try to answer what they read. So Yulia, you looked at our presentation, you smiled, you mentioned that something is going to change. I will give you a secret then. Then in 1 month we will invite you. We conduct such events every month, and then we'll see how you reacted and what was changed. But I would like to talk about the following things. So you say that periodically and actually pretty often lately, we are reviewing our previous agreements. The program that we are talking about with IMF, it is not how it looked at the beginning. There are certain changes, and we are talking about this now. You are now talking that there will be Ukrainian plan, Ukrainian facility review and everything around it. So I'm not going to ask you how it's going to be reviewed. Obviously, the process is still going on. So in your opinion, what are the reasons for this? And let's be self-critical here. Why we reconsider this and why we need to review this regarding what we have done and what we haven't done. It's a great question. Such reviews were included in facility architecture from the very beginning. And if you open regulation on Ukraine facility functionality, then it is written about the opportunity to review it. We reviewed it once. Now we review it for the second time. We are going to review it for the third time, if maybe even the first time as well. In IMF review is practically every quarter. We do not have the opportunity to review Ukrainian plan that often. Roughly it's once per year. But for example, the first review took place because when Ukrainian plan was written, it was written from based on different estimations. It was the end of 2023, at the 23rd, at the beginning of 2024. There still were some hopes that war might end soon, and this plan was planned as post-recovery plan. At the same time, we are fulfilling it during this full-scale invasion, and of course, it is impacting our priorities, our performance, and so on. The same is about certain statements, certain reforms, and some public investments. For instance, when the plan was written and in ethics, we wanted to focus on energy efficiency, on green deal, green transmission, all those nice positive things that we really need in the process of accession. But there are less priority than recovery of destructed energy infrastructure because of constant shellings of Russia of our infrastructure. So that's why formulations of wording, changes of wordings are connected just with the change of circumstances. We also adjust the timelines. It is a popular way to change commitments in the plan, so we do not necessarily change the wording. Sometimes we are moving, but what is important is that we are not only postponing them in time. So it's not that we always are lagging behind and we constantly say, let's do it at some later point. Very often we can move something forward as well, and the team from the European Commission is monitoring this process. They are calculating this balance so that it's not like Ukraine is weakening the level of its commitments. And when we are communicating, we are always saying that we never exclude some kind of steps. We try to clarify the wording. Sometimes we may lose some kind of directive, and now we added it, and now we need to be in compliance with this as well. So accordingly, if we postponed 2 steps, it means that we need to once again either add new steps or to other steps work with them faster. So this Ukraine support loan, it is understandable that additional 8 billion cannot be paid just because we are beautiful. So there is going to be top up not only in funds but also in commitments. So once again, these are going to be pretty significant commitments to cost 8 billion. So that's why those reviews are going on. And the European Commission is very thorough. They are very thorough in the monitoring of such commitments. For example, what we're reviewing now, we are tying Ukrainian plan closer to benchmarkings. Before it was really good beneficial reforms, but they were not always aligned with Euro integration track. Well, of course, they were not against it, but they were not considered as one and whole with Euro integration track. So everything that we are doing now, we are trying to everything that is new in our plan, we are trying to connect it with the benchmarks to those conditions that we have to perform to close negotiations in each chapter. And that's how we are trying to make this process of more clear, structured, and effective. Because once again, when some initiatives go through government or the parliaments, when you have the right to say that this is condition of our accession, then it is simplifying communication. So it is this matter that helps facilitate Euro integration, because we can get financial support, and we need to have some commitments that we had to work with in any case. I am going to give the floor to colleagues now. They will answer the question that we have online. Maxim, I am going to answer here. Just a second here. And then after that, we will take several questions from the audience. Alexandra, please. Yes, I will be very sly here. I will start answering, and then after that, I will give the floor to Yulia. So it has just been mentioned that actually it's normal to review Ukrainian plan, and the previous year when there was review, there was once again the question about support of small and medium enterprises, why they decreased this, and who managed to, and who dared to do this. Well, actually, there was a decision of the government agreed with the European Commission, so they decreased finances of this component of these investments. Why? Well, maybe Yulia can answer, but actually, once again, how we saw it, because the support to small and medium enterprises was following other programs, and these are programs 579, but not for the Funds of Ukraine facility, because now we are talking about the investments for the Funds of Ukraine facility. And the second pillar of Ukraine facility, that is not included in this number, 750 million. We also have big share now, more than 15% to small and medium enterprise. So maybe it's connected with this, but once again, the support of 579 and based on other program, it still remains the same. It is even bigger now in comparison with what was planned at the beginning for this year, as we are talking about now. So maybe the review is connected with this, but I will give the floor to Yulia here. Yes, really, this indicator 811 was excluded. That was already mentioned today. We left 8.10, but it seems to me that it's more or less the same. Well, it's a little bit lower, but it's not significantly decreased. If I remember correctly, there were some very technical reasons of decreasing it. So sometimes we just have some things like double funding, or the opportunity to stick to the requirements of a framework agreement, and so on. But here it is important to emphasize that these funds were not lost. So decrease took place, but it still entered with grants to the state budget, and it was pretty generous step from the side of the European Commission, because these funds, this grant support remained in the budget, even though it was not targeted for SME. But really, this indicator remained, and it's pretty big, and it is covering the 579 program. And another source that is there, it is the programs of the World Bank. So soon we are going to report, and we'll see what we spent there. Thank you. Do we have the questions from the audience? Victoria? You'll show me if you have something online. So, dear colleagues, if you have any questions, or if you have the desire to ask something or comment, now is the time. Nothing? You were showing something? I will take a look at what we have in the chat while I'm looking at it. Let me ask this general question to sum it all up, taking the time spent, and then we will get to the question the questions online. Well, actually, dear colleagues, it seems to me that we were discussing those structural beacons all around, what has been done, what hasn't been done. But this is a matter provoked by what Alexei was talking about, and Alexandra and colleagues that were speaking before us. So there will be the next conference, yet another conference. And could you please answer in a very concise way? Could you please give the answer to two questions? The first question, in your opinion, how can we measure the success of this event, if to talk in a nutshell? So we really want something to happen there. And the second question, what do we want to achieve from that conference? What should start after the URC conference? So here I will have not very correct analogy, taking into account the name of Donald Trump, but actually in the USA, after each economic address of the president to the nation, to Ukrainian members of parliament, to congressmen, something starts, either budget process or some kind of implementation of programs, and everything directly connected to that. So could you please answer in the following terms, what will be the success? And the second thing, what should start after the conference among some kind of priority things? So who shall we start with? Alexei. Yes, I will give some time to the colleagues. So it seems to me that the success of this URC should be measured 1 year after. New people, new partnerships, the ideas that were started but were not finished before URC. So that's how the cycle works. It seems to me that the success of this URC is not going to be measured during this URC, but during the next one. Thank you. Yulia? How do we measure URC success? Well, I just remember previous URC, how we communicated, that we always measure by the quantity of everything signed, the quantity of funds engaged, but it has already been mentioned that it is not only very correct to mention this because it's always just announced during the URC. But globally, URC is just a reason to talk about Ukraine, about our plans, about our strategies. So I will reformulate this matter because here it's not that much about URC success. URC is just opportunity to show all of this. It is some kind of window graph where we show our achievements, but in general, success is measured by those indicators that we set for ourselves and that we can show during the conference. So success is not in the conference, but in our work that was conducted before that. Thank you, Alexandra. And then I will ask 4 questions that came from the audience. And this will be the end of our discussion because in my point of view, the questions are to the point. Please, Alexandra. Well, first of all, I would like to agree. It's just we are talking for the last several days that URC is a process, because what is going to be agreed during URC, that was Roman was talking about, so now there are going to be lots of agreements. During URC, really, there is a signing of lots of memorandums and agreements are taking place, but people work on that before URC. And next year, we see how all these signed documents, whether they led to some kind, whether they will lead to some kind of result. But important thing is to agree and to sign. But what even more important is to implement all of these solutions. Implement the fact that the law is passed does not mean that it's going to be implemented. So for us, it's important to understand that we do not only just tick the boxes, but we need to report on quality implementation of solutions, and it is more important. You're of 8. Let me ask the question, and then we will get to you. Excuse me. It's just my question, maybe I need to structure it a little bit. So the question is the following: whether we need to have a separate session at URC 2026 to conclude what was done during URC 2026. And now the question, and when you answer those questions, could you please listen to account as well? The first question, what are the main deliverables and how donors can support deliverables of URC 2026? So basically, that's what we were talking about. I would like to ask our speakers to be very attentive. Here, the second question, how in the priorities of economic policy and URC recovery 2026, the model of economic pragmatism is taken into account and the protection of interest of Ukraine concerning the support of own producer, or maybe there are opportunities for growing our own production. This is an internal question. And 2 more very important questions, why I stopped Yura from the answer. The split of responsibilities, administration of local taxes. How achievable is this? Maybe some pilot will work. And one more question, it is interesting to find out about successful cases for Ukraine and Ukrainian communities after URC 2025. Yura, you wanted to answer. We will start from you. You wanted to say something. Well, yes, I will. You will answer about economic pragmatism after me. So if you don't mind, I will abuse this power a little bit. Concerning the previous question, I will start from the previous question. So you mentioned about economic outlook, about everything that is taken after the address of Donald Trump, how stocks, markets react, and how to compare all of this with Ukraine Recovery Conference. Our reality is different. Usually people after Ukraine Recovery Conference go on vacation because everyone is working really hard. They do a lot. URC is... Yura, you are kind of scare me with your first part, but well, at least it's frank. Of course, it's a joke because a lot of signings taking place, documents, agreements, and so on and so forth. It has already been mentioned. There was this question about main deliverables or how to measure all of this and so on. So now we have this great exercise. After the end of the conference in 2025, we gathered from official sources all the announced memorandums, agreements through various financial tools, and we put all of this together to measure it in funds, sectoral-wise, and so on. And what do we do now? Almost 1 year has passed, and we want to see, so what? What has been done? What's with those resources? Whether they physically arrived, because we signed and we understand perfectly well the bureaucracy and all the specifics. It's very time-consuming and process. Whether we managed to implement something, if yes, then what kind of projects, how we absorbed those resources, and we want to continue this exercise. And every year, we want to take a look at such practical dimensions of the progress. Thank you. Thank you. And if to talk about local bodies, will you say something here? Well, actually, in the presentation, we have separate slides regarding regional dimension and the matters connected with regional dimension, starting from splitting responsibilities, because it is also an important matter. And you know that in the first reading, the law was adopted. It didn't come to the second reading. They have their own discussion, their own process. Ministry of Development is investing a lot here to define clearly who should be responsible for what, financially wise, tax wise, and concerning a split between bodies of self-governance and so on. The second part concerning the taxes, and I believe that it is a topic of a separate monitoring, and using this opportunity, I would like to offer to have separate discussion on that, because we can talk about this hours. Okay, Alexandra, and after Alexandra, I would like to engage Roman and Maxim. Well, the first thing, before you split the taxes, you need to understand what does what, and that is concerning indicator one of the Ukrainian plans that Yuri has mentioned. It's, for example, draft law on city commitments. So now we need to define who's responsible for health, for education, and then after that we are going to split the taxes and divide the taxes, because concerning the taxes, where a solution very often discussed is where value-added tax and income tax, where should it be paid, but it is not even the matter in a tax split, but in other matters. So it's a different discussion. So if we talk about the economy, recently we hear more and more about this exercise that the government is doing together with the World Bank, Economy of the Future, and it's more about pragmatic support. So we need to understand that this is a synergy. There is a scenario what economy would like to achieve. And the most important thing is for us to understand what do we want to do to achieve this economy, for it to be that big and that strong and that comprehensive. And it is going to be translated to our action plan. So once again, to achieve any kind of development economy, we need to do what? We need to have such an action plan. We talked about this partially today. Ukraine plan is not comprehensive plan. We also have our Euro integration agenda. It has much more work and more commitments that we have to stick to. But today, I just would like to emphasize that if we are talking about Ukraine support loan and what was ratified by the parliament today, we need to take a look at it there. It is written very clearly that funds will arrive if we have democracy, if we have rule of law, if we have active IMF program, and it means that we need to do our work. We need to do our homework to achieve that economy, whatever we call it, economy of the future, pragmatic economy, economy of blossoming, flourishing, whatever we call it. The most important thing is for us to follow the commitments and even a little bit more. Thank you, Roman, please. Thank you. If to talk about the assessment of the results achieved, first of all, we need to understand the criteria, what we should consider a successful conference, because the government does not say. Well, if we take a look then at it in details, then we need to understand that. So, but I think that the more agreements signed with business, the more agreements signed among cities, the better it is. With government, it's a little bit more complicated sometimes. The second thing Alexandra has mentioned about economy of the future, certain vision or certain analytical exercise. I can talk here about the matrix of reform. This is also this effort to gather different commitments, plans, and so on. We also can talk about a national adaptation program here, that it seems to me it is not less important document than, well, at least it is a legally binding document. I don't know what is the format and how economy of the future will look like, whether it's going to be just slide deck. We saw lots of them during the previous conferences, or it's going to be the update of national economic strategy, for instance. So this is already some legally binding document when public officials have to perform all of this, and the government has the right to demand reporting and so on. So definitely it is a useful analytical exercise, but the matter is who's going to be responsible for its performance. So if we have now ratified agreements where we see these efforts to somehow dilute this responsibility or put it on someone else's shoulder, then it's still a big question how we are going to keep moving forward. 600, 700 laws. Yes, that was the number mentioned. That these are the laws that are needed for performing adaptation program. How many Euro integration laws were adopted by the Parliament last month? Well, one. Okay. One hand will be enough to count. So it's a rhetoric question. Thank you. Let's move on. I will give the floor to Alexei, then to Maxim, and then Yulia will be able to sum it all up. What has been done, what hasn't been done, and how to move on. Alexei, please. Well, actually, it is difficult now to answer the question about pragmatic economic policy. In 2022, in 2023, it was easy to answer. Why? Because well, there was this understanding about Ukraine's recovery and reconstruction, that it is such an important thing that it has to be done by someone else, not Ukraine. Foreign business, foreign implementators, foreign purchasing, procurement companies, foreign NGOs, international organizations. Because previous times, when there was the recovery of, when it was recovery of other countries, these were some kind of failed states, and it's better not to give funds to failed states, because foreigners will deal with it better. It is not always like this, and it was not always like this. There is a SIGA report. There are lots of failures that were because of this type of thinking. But then in 2023, I would say that pragmatic approach is that it's Ukrainian property. We have to repair our institutions. We need to teach our business, our public officials. to be the owners of Ukrainian recovery. Yes, we are definitely making mistakes now, but we need to learn on them, not to have them in the future. And there is no some kind of panacea. No, there are no partners or foreigners that would be able to do it better than we. Fortunately, I haven't heard this for a pretty long time already. We have lots of mistakes, but lots of success as well in anti-corruption, in recovery, in European integration. That's why it is difficult for me to imagine, I don't know, a URC talk when someone imposes on Ukrainian colleagues such kind of rhetoric that is not proper for Ukrainian person. So we are all aligned already. There are some things like unique experience, strong technologies and contacts from Ukrainian business, Ukrainian economy. That's something that we lack, and it's a win-win cooperation, joint enterprises, joint projects, joint sales. So it seems to me that all economies that is going to be at URC is going to be pragmatic. Maybe I am wearing rose-tinted spectacles, but that is my answer to the question. Thank you, Maxim, please. Thank you, Igor. There was this question, how to assess the effectiveness or success of URC. In my opinion, only the last URC will be successful because, once again, the aim, recovery of Ukraine. I went through URC Lugano, London, Berlin, Rome. Now we are going to have Gdansk. According to the last assessment of the World Bank, as of the 31st of December 2025, the general price of recovery and reconstruction is $588 billion. These are huge numbers, absolutely enormous. Just think about it, $588 billion. We can't even imagine this. So that's why successful URC is the last URC, when we can say that Ukraine is recovered, it is reconstructed, we will have the work enough for everyone. There was a question about the support of Ukrainian business. I think that it will be enough for Ukrainian business, for foreign business. And actually, it would be good not to visit all European not to have URC in all European capitals, because there are 25 of them still left. You want the last URC to be sooner. Thank you, Yulia, please. Yes, you asked me to sum it all up. I wanted to get back to what Roman was talking about, the adopting of the laws. It was very, this first reaction, don't ask me why I have tears in my eyes. So of course it is a big challenge with all our acts should go through the parliament, but summing up the previous panel and our panel and other different speakers, it seems to me that two important things that we all agree on. The first one is that we can show million various beautiful, colorful presentations, but if nothing is done, then there is no value in it. So here we need to get away from window dressing to real implementation of our and making our homework, and that's how our success can be measured. And the second thing that was mentioned just now by Alexei, but I believe that we all agree with that, it's concerning ownership, that it should not be something written by someone else in Brussels or in Washington or in any other capital. It should be the commitment that Ukrainian government defined for itself, some kind of goals that Ukrainian government set for itself, that shared by the Ukrainian business, and we will all be working on that as a society and on the state. So it is that principle that we have in such programs as Ukraine Facility, because all these commitments are not from the outside. They're all discussed with the governments through what we see as important for us, as a realistic thing, as an important thing. And it's important for this to be the principle of this URC and all other URCs. And reconstruction process, it's important for all of us to have the main stake in what we are doing. We ourselves have to know that we need it, and no one else is going to get it out of the situation. So we have to work. Okay, thank you, Yura. You forgot about you. Okay, sorry. Then let's do it in the following way. So the conclusion is very simple. If we have no further questions, then let's sum it all up. If you don't mind, I will be doing this in sitting. So first of all, I would like to express my gratitude to those who were listening to us, those who asked questions, and it is important because we are working to be heard. We want to be heard by the government and want to be heard by the main stakeholders. The second thing, I would like to express my gratitude for our wonderful guests. I would like to express my gratitude to Yulia, Legacy, Katarina. They voiced very interesting prospects concerning URC 2026, because in many cases, and even in expert and in political environment, URC is sometimes considered as, some kind of ritual meetings, ritual gatherings where everyone talks about something, but it is actually it's a tool, and its effectiveness depends on how we are going to work there as Ukraine and how our donors, our donors will cooperate with us, but not only donors. And the third very important matter here, it is about the fact that situation today in comparison with 2022, 2023, and even 2024, 2025 changed significantly, changed economically wise. And today, really, we have to somehow build the policy, develop the policy in different way, understanding medium-term and long-term prospects and economic resilience on the one hand, and on the other hand, the building of new recovered economy. Let's call it like this. Three main short conclusions. The first one is definitely we all require well thought of and very wise economic policy, and this policy should be developed by professionals in Ukraine. That was what Alexei was talking about, but it is also important that government and all stakeholders cooperate. Unfortunately, let's be frank here, it is not always possible, and it's a huge problem that we all need to overcome together. The second point, that we need to see the prospects and priorities clearly, and we need to focus our activity on implementing the priorities, because to do everything all together and to talk about everything all together is not possible, because we have neither administrative nor financial resource for this. The third point, we need to understand that economic resilience and recovery of Ukraine, it is a complicated, long-lasting problem. The numbers that we mentioned and that Maxim also mentioned today, it's not a general number of our recovery. These are funds that we will need during the next 10 years, and it means that we will need lots of funds, and here everyone will have the place to be, an opportunity to be the hero, to make our country more resilient, stronger, and one of the leaders who would like to be the leaders of the global world, but at least regional leader. We definitely would be able to become a regional leader. And wrapping up our today's discussion, I also would like to have two announcements. The first one, on the website of our organization, we are going to place all the necessary materials. Our presentation is already available on the website of our consortium. There was the question concerning the results, concerning certain cases, and here I will advertise the Institute of Economic Research. On our website, we have materials where we checked the problem of using funds for recovery, successful cases of activity of communities, answering the question concerning communities. And once again, I would like to mention here about Yuri Romashko was talking about. They do really amazing work, because they try to see what was done since then and what we have now when we are talking about URC. I would like to express my separate gratitude to our today's speaker, Alexandra Betli, Yuri Romashko, Roman Yanisovich, Maxim Samoiluk, for everything that they are doing and for everything that they have done today. Thank you, our wonderful speakers. I would like to express my separate gratitude to our technical support, interpreter. They were working, they are long-lasting partners for us, and they will definitely keep on working with us. And I would also like to express my gratitude for the person responsible for all our public events, Victoria Zhuvtenko, because she organized all of us, and she organized this wonderful event. I believe that our motto of the future is very simple. We will win, and we will definitely recover and reconstruct. If we talk from this dimension, then everything will be okay. And I would like to finish with my words, glory to Ukraine, Slava Ukraini. Thank you everyone for attention.